And he says, I don't believe in this stuff. He said the F word and was like, I think I just saw a few minutes or so go by, and all of a sudden it steps out. As I am doing everything I can to lose it because I'm not believing what I'm seeing. This thing turns its head and looks at me and just darts towards me.
Oh. Hello and welcome to Monster 911. I appreciate so many of you really enjoying the last show, the 1949 Oklahoma incident, and I appreciate all the kind comments. Please keep the comments coming. I'll do my best to respond back as timely as I can. If you're new to the channel, my name is Lance. I travel, interview, and investigate all across America, exposing a truth and giving a voice to courageous eyewitnesses who have experienced the unimaginable, the existence of paranormal living entities, creatures that are very much alive in isolated areas across the U.S. Today's show is an interview that I did with a young lady who called the report hotline. She relayed a spine-chilling encounter she had while at an Oklahoma WMA, or Wildlife Management Area. What was to be a relaxing afternoon with friends around an evening campfire turned terrifying in a matter of moments for her. Listen to what she saw and the creature that she never hopes to see again.
Okay, so I grew up in Oklahoma in the Green Country area. My entire life been in Okie, and it was in 2017 that we had decided to take a trip to a wildlife management area, and we were hanging out in the Blue X is where we parked our vehicle. And we were just hanging out. I am familiar with animal sounds, cougars and coyotes and all of those kind of sounds. I do a lot of things, sometimes in the woods at dark and early morning hours and during the days and stuff like that. So I'm aware of sounds.
Okay.
So when we and it was in mid-January of 2017. I would say probably anywhere around 10 to 11 is when we arrived at the wildlife management area, and we parked where the blue X is, and we had been hanging out for a little while. And when my ex-boyfriend and boyfriend at the time said, "Oh wow, I think I just saw an elk." And so we were on if you're looking down towards the purple line from the blue X, we were hanging out on the right hand side of the creek. Well, I crossed the creek and went to the left hand side, and I crouched down to see if any more elk would come through.
Okay, I see.
And so I'm just across from the blue X on the other side of the creek now.
All
and
right.
I'm looking, and the purple line, the purple arrow, the darker purple.
Yes.
That is where he was saying the elk, what he thought was an elk went through. And it was going that direction.
Crossing that.
And
Okay.
yes, crossing the creek.
Gotcha.
And so I'm just crouched down there. I'm probably about 10, 15 minutes. I'm not really sure, but I didn't really see anything moving about or anything. And then all of a sudden, down where the kind of a pink color on the curve of the creek,
Yes.
I saw this big orangutan orange ball. Like, it was just big, huge orangutan orange colored ball. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. You couldn't see the shoulders or anything like that. It was just like a big old ball.
A ball is what you're saying.
Like a ball, B-A-L-L.
Okay.
And like big. And there was a little, I wasn't up close to it, so I really can't tell how small that tree was. But it was a dead tree.
All right.
And it was moving. And it's just to the right of the ball. And
okay.
I sat there and I stared at that thing for, probably the last 5-10 minutes of the time I was sitting there crouched down.
Okay.
And it never moved other than the little tree next to it. And I say little because to the ball, it looked little. And so I just got bored, and we went on about our way. And, being January, it starts getting dark fairly early. And we were sitting there. We had a little charcoal grill, because you can't camp out here. You can hang out once the hunting seasons are over, but you can't camp. So we had like a camp set up, but without the sleeping aspects of it.
All right.
And so we had the little fire thing going, and my cousin and his girlfriend were with us. And so my cousin and my ex-boyfriend, they were playing music. One was with the guitar and one was with the djembe, or djembe, however you say that.
Okay.
And
were you guys? Is this campfire site? Was it at the blue mark, the sky blue mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so we were sitting there, and my boyfriend at the time, he gets up and starts walking towards the vehicle, probably to get cigarettes or something. And he just keeps walking, and he was like, I can't believe, wait, what? And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? And he says, I don't believe in this stuff. He said the F word and was like, I think I just saw a Bigfoot. And so we all jump up and we start, walking. And
is he standing by the truck saying this?
Yes, and the
Okay.
truck's the blue, basically the blue X. That's where our camp is. Our camp is towards the little pond way behind the truck, kind of,
Mm.
and then towards the okay. So we all get up, start walking, and my cousin takes off running, and I hear my boyfriend say, about 30 yards or 30 feet, something like that, to the right. And so when we all got down, and you can see there's a road that crosses the creek.
I do. I see it.
Okay, so I took that right, and then you can see an indentation that'll go towards the yellow X. That
Yes.
is like an entrance driveway to that field.
Mm-hmm.
I went that way. All the rest of them went down through the creek.
All right.
But I bailed, and the yellow X is where I stood, so I could see the entire field.
Right. Okay.
And so the light colored purple is my idea of how this thing traveled, the Sasquatch.
Oh.
By description of where he said that it took a right, and where I was, okay, so let's back up just a smidge. So when I get to the center of the field, I'm there. They're in the creek. You can see that wooded area between the two of us.
I do.
Okay, I can hear my party on the other side. And I'm thinking they're walking towards me.
Mm.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm yelling out to them saying, hey, keep coming forward because I'm in this field. Come on through. And then I notice that they're going back down towards the vehicle by their voices. And so I'm like, hey, are y'all coming or what? And I'm still hearing this walking through the woods towards me. But then I start hearing it going a little bit further away from me where the arrow's going, how it's traveling.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm like going, okay, they're not responding to me. And I'm going to stay right where I'm at because I'm hearing walking in the woods.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just standing there. And a few minutes or so go by, and all of a sudden it steps out of that wooded tree line and walks across along the back tree line and then goes back into the woods. And all of that time of it going across there, I am turning around, I'm rubbing my eyes, I am doing everything I can to lose it because I'm not believing what I'm seeing.
And so it's out in the open so you can clearly see it.
Oh, yeah. And it's tall. If you really have a grasp of how far the distance is that I am from it, and I can still see it, and I can see it like walking through. And at this point, we're not quite dusk, but we're getting in that time frame of where the sun's going to be starting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a dark colored one. If it's not black, then it's a really, really dark brown or something. I would say black.
Go back just a little way. So you can hear your party you thought was walking, but you could hear them still talking, and it sounded like they were going back to the truck. Did that confuse you when you heard something moving, and then you were hearing
Yes.
two different things?
Yes.
And so when it finally, this Sasquatch came out, you were looking at this thing and you were just probably in shock. Like, am I looking at what I'm looking at? And
Yeah.
did it look like the same color you saw as this orange ball earlier?
No.
Okay, so
That's
that was.
why I believe I saw it. I believe I saw two.
Okay. And so tell me when you saw this, and then I'll let you continue here. When it moved, tell me how it walked. It moved. Was it at a very smooth. You know, a lot of people talk about the head doesn't bounce up and down like a human when we
Yes.
walk. Is it just, did it have a glide to it, or tell me about how you saw it move?
Okay, so you know how everyone wants to say that it has an ape swing to the arms?
Yes.
No, that's not what I saw.
Okay.
It did have arms that you could tell they were longer, but they did not swing like that. They did, kind of as it walked, it did, kind of like when we're walking, our arms kind of sway a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't have that big, like ape swing.
Like the patty film.
I'm not really sure. Yes.
You know how
It took me a
everybody, yeah.
second. Yeah,
That's
it took
okay.
me a
No,
second.
that's okay. Yeah, it's got the patty film, what they kind of named her. She's got this very exaggerated, long, ape-like swing as she looks over her right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing like that.
No, nothing like that. Nor
Okay.
did it have a hunch to it. It
Oh.
was and it wasn't a heavy set one. It was kind of how some men are tall and lanky.
Mm-hmm.
It was tall and lanky. Um, if I were to describe, and I hate to use this because then people are like, "Oh, well, that was a man in a suit," But if you think of Chewbacca and you take off the gear,
Yes.
it reminded me of Chewbacca.
Mm.
Just black and tall, like way tall.
Notably tall enough that you could tell that there was some height to it.
Oh yeah,
And
because of the trees that it was walking by.
okay. So give me a rough approximation from that yellow X where you were standing and you saw it as you drew that arrow. How far was it when it came out of the woods and you could visibly see it?
I'm not good with distance.
Was it
But
a football field length or
I was gonna say if I had to really guess, it was at least a football field.
okay.
But it could be less than that, to be honest,
Okay.
because that's why I was kind of hoping that one day me and you can go out there
Oh, absolutely. We can.
and I can show you exactly.
Okay. Yeah, we can kind of go through, and I've done that before, where I've traveled around and we kind of recreate what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we stand where you think your party was at, and when you first crouched down, and where your boyfriend at the time, where he was at, roughly, and then do that. So absolutely, we can do that at a point.
Yeah. I can tell you that the last time I was out there, I took my camera because I wanted to find, well, we'll get to that, but I wanted to find something. And the grass was like 6-7 foot high at that point.
Oh, I believe it.
So I tried with the camera over it, but I still couldn't get what I was trying to get. But there's a good distance. I mean, you can see how big that field looks just on the map.
Yeah,
So
and we can actually I can get on Google, and they have a distance finder on that, and I can put roughly where you were standing, find that same field, and find the distance where you're at, and we can get a rough approximation using Google.
okay. Yeah, because I really honestly I don't know. I just know that it's a pretty good sized field when you're standing in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It looks like it. It looks like it.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I was standing where I could see all of the field. That's why I got where I am, to where I could see down the handle.
Oh,
that's what I call it, the handle.
Yes, yes.
I don't know any other way to explain it, but
so I interrupted earlier. Go ahead and start from when you saw it, and you're the only one out there. Continue from there.
Okay, so the thing is that wasn't all I experienced.
Really?
So up to this point, where, it's walked out of the tree line and across the end of the field and has now disappeared into the tree line again. All of that was peaceful. It was exciting. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like I said, I kept trying to lose it because I didn't believe it. And I went to turn around to walk away after he had went into the tree line.
Okay.
And something told me to turn around. And my thought was, oh, I might get to see it again. And it still makes me a little nervous just thinking about this. But I turned around and I crouched down.
Turn around. Okay. Were you still in the field?
Yes.
Okay.
I did not. I mean, I only took maybe 3 or 4 steps from where I was.
Oh.
Before I had the feeling I needed to turn around.
Okay.
And so I crouched down and I'm looking in the direction where he was. And all of a sudden, this thing, I don't even really know what it was, on all fours comes jumping out where the red line is.
Really?
Yes, it jumps out, and it was a white branch. And that's how I marked it at the time, was a white branch.
So,
and
when you saw it, it was already on already on all fours?
Yes.
And it was it kind of lumbering to you, or was it running?
Okay, so when it jumps out of the wooded line, and you can see how it just kind of travels along the wooded area there.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be looking at me or nothing. It's just traveling along.
All right.
And mind you, I'm crouched down right now. I'm watching this thing. And sorry, let me get a drink.
No, that's okay. Take your time. Take your time. Yeah, get a drink.
Yeah, I'm kind of shaky right now from it, but
it's okay.
Because it really freaked me out.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
So this thing, it's just walking, and to be honest with you, I've asked people about it and things, and I still don't know what it is, but it was slicker than slick black, darker than dark black.
Okay.
If it had ears, you couldn't see them because it was slicked back.
Okay.
I don't recall a tail. You know how a greyhound has the rib cage that's really big and then it scrunches up at the gut?
Yeah, it gets real small.
Okay, that's what it had. And the entire back and head and neck and everything went flat, like it was straight. And that's where people get the idea that it was a hog. And they're like, oh, it's probably an emaciated hog.
And I'm like, hog, H-O-G.
Yes.
Okay.
Hog, a pig. And I'm like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work because the snout was canine. But it moved smooth like a cat.
So it was like in a semi-crouched, all four movement. It was stealthy in its movement.
It wasn't crouching like it was hunting. It was just walking like, you know how dogs will kind of walk a fence line and they just they're smelling along as they go, but he wasn't smelling. He was just walking along.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. It does. And then you could see that it had these canine features.
And that's, yes, the nose, the way that the snout it was like a dog. But like I said, if it had ears, they were slicked back and you couldn't see them.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, this thing turns its head and looks at me and just darts towards me.
Oh.
Not a sound came out of it. Not a sound. I didn't snarl teeth. It didn't anything. And mind you, I'm crouched down and I'm sitting here and I'm staring at it as it's running at me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like staring at it. And then it dawns on me, it's running at you.
Yeah.
Get up and run.
Oh my.
So I get up and I turn around and I start taking off running towards that driveway entrance thing.
Oh, I see it.
And once I get to, you can see in the map where there's a little bit of it's really kind of a bad, but you can see where there's a little bit of an indentation in the woods there at that thing. When I got to that point, I turned around and looked, and it was probably right about where I was.
Oh my.
And I took off running, and when I got to the creek, I did not need to cross the creek, but I was in a panic. And I'm standing at the creek going, how do I get across? How do I get across? I didn't need to. I just needed to go down the side. And I happened to hear the voice of my boyfriend at the time. And I snapped out of it and I turned around and I started running down the side of the creek. And I said, something's chasing me. And my cousin and him jump up. They grab a gun and they go and they found nothing. Wow. So I'm like shaking and like, they're like, what did you see? And I'm explaining it to them. And it was like, there was nothing when we got there. There was nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I said, I've never been chased and be that scared before. And all I can tell you is that it was chasing me. And so we kind of sat there around the campsite. Now it's dark, because at that point when this all happened with the animal, the dog-like thing came out of the woods, we are now at dusk. Okay, so it's not dark yet, but it is in that zone of, there's less light kind of situation.
Right.
So once they've came back and everything, and we're sitting back there talking, that was when the actual sundown was complete.
Okay.
And they're like going, talking about it and this and that. And I'm like, hey, I thought y'all were coming and I was talking to y'all and I was like, we didn't hear you.
Oh, wow.
I said, you mean you didn't hear me telling y'all come through the woods and, hey, no, come over here in the field. I'm over here. And I was like, no, we didn't hear you. We didn't even know where you went. He said, all I knew was that you took a right and took off. And I was like,
man.
Yeah. I was like, I thought you all were coming and I was hollering at y'all. So when you all started going back towards the truck, I was trying to figure out what was walking in the woods, and I wasn't going to miss. If I had the chance to see what everybody wants to see,
sure.
I wasn't moving.
Right. It's kind of like they were, initially it's kind of like how deer hunters, how we have sent some people around through the woods and we have one person go down further and cut in so the group can kind of flush out the deer, and that one hunter can get there, can harvest a deer or see something.
Yes.
Interesting. So go ahead. Please continue.
So I've had a few people send me stuff about dogmen. And it doesn't match, because they talk about how it had hair and, they walk on their four legs like a normal dog, and then they stand up and, this and that, and they snarl their teeth and all things. And it just doesn't make any sense. But there was one time when this actually happened that I did try to find something online just to give people an idea of what I'm trying to explain.
Oh, okay.
And I looked up demon dogs.
Okay.
And there was a movie poster and it didn't match completely. It didn't match completely, but it was the closest thing
Okay.
that I found to kind of look like what I saw. Um, Now I will say that there was a video not too long ago that I watched, and it's just people talking over kind of like yours would. And they were talking about a few things about what they saw that kind of sounded like what I saw. But then when they started talking a little bit more, it didn't anymore.
Okay.
So I'm still confused on what it was I saw with that. I am 100% sure I saw a Sasquatch twice.
Well,
But what that other thing is, I don't know.
yeah, it could be a couple things. Here's the thing that I have learned. When someone sees a dog man, these creatures, they want to say, there's an instant bias in their head that says that's what they must all look like, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, and just for a poor analogy, it's kind of like humans. Well, all humans must look like me. Well, that's not true. We have people that are tall and short and thick and thin and all kinds of races and colors and all kinds of different morphology and features. So
Yes.
here's what we can say. There can be any number of features with a dog man, in my opinion. There can be any number of features with a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, that they don't have to look like this always or this should someone get an
Right.
actual good picture. So I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't have to look like what we see in the movies. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
in most cases, it doesn't. It doesn't fit the movies. Hollywood is much different than reality.
Right.
And so you didn't see it on what was coming out, what was lumbering and walking on all fours. It was black, and
Mm-hmm.
there was no ears you could visibly see. There was no
Correct.
tail that you could see behind it.
That I could yeah, I don't recall a tail at all, but people are, I've come to learn that sometimes you just don't remember certain things, even
Right.
though if they were there or not. But
Now,
yeah.
I do remember one interview I did where it was a family that lived not too far from me, actually, outside of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And they had two dogman creatures cross in front of them while they were traveling up their driveway to their house. And they live very rural. And so as they were traveling, the wife saw it, the husband didn't. He was actually looking off to the side, and she was looking forward as they were traveling up the drive. And she thought, just for an instant, they were moving left to right across the road, and they just darted, boom, boom. And she said they had a squared off hindquarter, but the rump was very pronounced. She said it had, she goes, I initially thought it was a large calf. It was so big. And that's what she said. She said, I thought it was a large cow. But I'm thinking, what's cows doing on the property? And then it was so fast, but then her mind's trying to play catch up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did I see? And she said it had a squared off back to it, but the butt was very pronounced. Like it had a bubble butt, as she said. And she says,
Mm-hmm.
but she saw tails, big, big, bushy tails on them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's only one small feature of what you're kind of resonating a little bit. This squared off, but you don't remember a tail.
Well, I can't say squared off.
Okay.
Um, because it was, I was watching it from a profile at first.
Okay.
Okay, and then straight on. I mean, like straight on. When it turned to run at me, it was straight on. But it was when I was watching it like a profile, it was still kind of from the front angle,
Okay.
profile.
I can see
Um,
from the the topography there, I could see where that would be.
Yeah, and so like a greyhound, um, that's the only way. The only thing that I can think of canine that matched the most, as far as the structure of the body build.
Okay, kind of that
Um,
smaller waistline.
yes, and then it goes up to the back hip flank stuff, and that's why where the tail it just kind of, I don't know if it was there and it tucked, or there wasn't a tail. I don't know, because when it was walking where I would be able to see the profile, I seen no tail.
Okay.
And nor did I see the ears at that point, or running straight at me did I see ears.
Okay.
But one thing that I did not say was the size. So it was large. If you're familiar with what a size of a Welsh pony would be, that
Yes.
would be what I would say the size was.
That's good size.
Yeah.
That's really so. I can't recall in the as you measure a pony or a horse, so many hands high, right?
Right.
Do they call at the horse there at the shoulder at the top the wither like they do a dog?
I don't, I'm not familiar for sure with that. Because it's been a long time since I've been on the farm working.
Okay.
Um,
So this was
because
large
I
enough.
grew up on the farm, but it's been a while since I've been on the farm into working horses or the cattle or anything. So I've lost some of the terminology.
Oh, that's okay. I
Um,
was just curious. Welch pony, I mean, that's a good size. It's not a quarter
yeah.
horse, but it's still good size.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it into a horse size,
Okay.
but I would definitely put it into a Welsh. And even a Shetland pony, I think, would still be a little bit on the small side.
So a Shetland pony can be at least anywhere
A
from,
couple of hands to 3 or 4 hands shorter than a Welsh.
yeah, so you're talking, and I'm just trying to go back in my childhood and remember when we had ponies and quarter horses and calves
Yeah.
at the farm. I mean, so you're talking at least 350 to 500 pounds.
Oh, yeah, it was large. But
Yeah.
the thing is, with it being so, like, so, people want to say emaciated hog, but like I said, the snout didn't work. But
Mm.
was this thing emaciated, or is it well fed? Just that's its design. I don't know, but it was large.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you in hog hunting, and we've done a lot of hog hunting, hogs, if they're emaciated like that, it's I find it's not impossible, but I'll say it's improbable in that usually hogs when they get that big, it's kind of like you can't have one with the other. If you get a
mhm.
hog that's that large, which is rare, it happens, but they're going to be well fed to be that big. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? It's kind of like
right,
saying it's kind of an oxymoron statement. It was big. It was big, small. Well, it's
yeah,
hard to have a hog that big and still be somewhat emaciated because even though they do happen, it's rare that you can get a hog 350 to 500 pounds and be emaciated. And most hogs, it does happen if they're that way, they tend to die fairly quick, and unfortunately they're going to be cannibalized by the rest of the by their own kind.
right.
So and they run a certain way. They don't. You
Yes,
said
and
it
it's not
was
smooth.
yes, it's not smooth. A hog, it's going to be grunting as it's moving. And here's the thing with hogs, they have excellent hearing and excellent olfactory or smell. So that's
Mhm.
their what they are very poor at is eyesight. Eyesight.
Yes.
So you got to be really, really close for them to kind of charge at you like a bull, like a matador bull.
Mhm.
And so that kind of tells me based on the features, how it was moving. It doesn't move small. It kind of waddles.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get going, you get a razorback at you. It's not going to be that big, and it will come, and it's notable that you can tell that's a wild boar. That's a wild sow. And it
Mm-hmm.
just, you don't have to put it in your brain, what is that? If
Right.
that makes sense. I mean, a
Right.
pig, even if it's domesticated or wild, you're still going to say, that's a pig.
Right. Yeah, and if you see a silhouette of a pig, you're always going to see that snout.
Right. It's going to be very pronounced. Good point. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
very pronounced. And initially, your brain may have catch up, like, what? Oh, okay, that's a pig. That's a hog. And based
Mm-hmm.
on where you were at, that distance across the field, I highly doubt that hog, if it was a hog, which I don't believe it was, would have not seen you. They would have smelled you, and or first, if the wind was in the right direction, and they normally 9 times out of 10 get the hell out of there. If they
Yeah.
catch wind of a human or anything that's abnormal in their natural surroundings, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone. Only when they
Yeah.
have sow babies, or excuse me, piglets, when they have
Mm-hmm.
piglets or anything like that where they have to defend. But
Right.
that's not what I'm hearing.
No. No. And that's the thing, I know how a pig runs. I'm familiar with a pig snout, like the sounds of a pig, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that I can explain the way the run, I'm trying to find the right word for that word, the gait,
Okay. Yeah.
if that's the right word for an animal.
Sure. Sure.
Um, the closest thing is if you see how a big cat would move.
Hmm.
But totally looking like a dog.
Interesting. Well, in the feline family of felines, which we're talking mountain lions,
Mm-hmm.
bobcats, things that are indigenous to Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
We know that because of how God made them, they're a predator, right?
Yes.
And predators move in silence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the equivalent of like an owl in the bird kingdom.
Yep.
They fly. Owls fly in silence.
Yep.
So they're smooth. Predators are they move stealthy, they move
Mm-hmm.
quiet, and they move real smooth.
Mm-hmm.
The more domesticated you make an animal or have bred them to be more domesticated, they tend to not have that smoothness. It tends to be a little choppy. The gait is a little different than nature's adaptation, how God made them to be very
Mm-hmm.
smooth in trying to come up on their prey and to get a meal or to attack. So that's very interesting, that feature you noted, how smooth it was, but yet it looked canine and
Yes. And huge.
and huge. Yeah, that tells me I highly doubt it was anything of swine. It tells me that right. I mean, right now, did you see any eye color by chance at all? I mean, I know that's
N-
kind of a out there question, but
No. You could kind of see like the shadow effects. And you got to remember it was kind of like a silky shine to it. Okay.
hmm,
So you with the shadow effects you could see the sockets and stuff, but as far as actually seeing the eye itself, no.
it wasn't close enough yet.
Right.
Um,
And I wasn't going to stick around on it
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Once it clicked that this thing was running at me, it was like, oh crap, okay, we got to
yeah.
go.
No kidding. I can't imagine how terrified you were when your brain finally caught up to say, you got to get out. You
Yeah,
know,
I've never gone into a panic, and I panicked. When I hit that creek, I went into a panic.
Because the
And I
creek.
had wader boots on too.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, why are you panicking at the creek when you got wader boots? You could have crossed it.
Well,
You
your
know?
your brain hadn't caught up yet, and this is the issue with a lot of people when people listen to these shows. It's easy to kind of what I call be kind of an armchair quarterback, right? How come he didn't throw it there? How come he didn't pass it here? And it's kind of the same thing what happens when people hear these stories or encounters of people. You go, well, why didn't they do this? And why didn't they turn around and shoot? And why didn't they run this? When you're in that moment, it's very difficult when you panic. Your logic is not thrown out. What takes over is more of what's called of the brain the limbic system. It's more of a primitive system, and it's about survival. Run now. And so when your brain catches up and you start to convert it to that frontal part of the brain that uses reasoning and logic, you go, okay, wait a minute. And that's what happened with you. You said you finally realized, wait a minute, I hear somebody down here. Why don't I just walk down the creek bed here? And so that's what happened. You finally caught up from your panic, and then you yelled and you came across your boyfriend and the others, and they got their guns and everything, and you were yelling, hey,
Yes.
something's chasing me. So
Yeah.
a lot of people stay in that panic mode because this is such a what we would deem kind of a cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make sense. Kind of like your boyfriend going to the truck going, what the
Yeah.
what the F is going on here? What? I didn't think they were real. So he's processing it, but he's doing it out loud so you guys can hear him. And you're going, what are you talking about? What? And so that's what happens for a lot of first-time eyewitnesses. They go, this can't be real. I thought they were fake. I thought this was pretend. I thought there was just one. What are they doing here? There's nothing. This is not the northwest part of the United States. This is Oklahoma. So they got all this bombarding their brain, but yet they're still looking at something they've never ever seen. And after the encounter, you have a lot of questions. And you go,
Right.
why did I see it? What is it doing here? How come I saw it at this time? And how come no one's talking about this? I mean, on and on and on and on.
Right.
But go ahead and fill me in a little bit where you're at the campfire. It's dark now, and what was the conversation like at that time? And was there anything else that happened?
Nothing else happened. There were some coyotes later on before we packed up and bailed out. Because like I said, once again, you can't sleep there.
Oh, right.
There's designated camping area at the very, very beginning of the wildlife reserve, but in the reserve you cannot camp. So honestly, sitting there, we all were very quiet, in our own heads. Occasionally somebody would say something, and that's, when we first got back to camp, we're sitting there and we're just quiet. And that's when I was like, wait, did y'all not hear me or what? Why didn't you come?
Right.
And they was like, what are you talking about? I was like, you didn't hear me hollering at you? And it's like, no. And I was like, well, I could hear you all talking. I said, you were even like looking at a place where you thought that he walked across where his feet were wet and they went on that rock. And you were talking about how the hair looked like it was splattered water on the ground. And my cousin's girlfriend was saying that she was like, oh, that's just the dog. And we were like going, well, he does get in the water,
Mm-hmm.
and this was another conversation that did happen at the fireplace, was like, because I brought it up about hearing what they were talking about.
Okay.
And was like, well, yeah, the dog does get in the water, but his hair doesn't hang to the ground.
Right.
And so we're not sure. I didn't see it. I didn't go look because I was in the field. And then after being chased, I stayed at the vehicle and the campsite. I didn't adventure anywhere. I made sure the dogs stay with us, and we didn't go nowhere. But they were talking about that. There was a couple of times that I heard them saying, well, what about over here? And my boyfriend kept adamantly saying, no, he crossed right here. I could hear him telling them that. And I'm all at the same time going, are you all not the ones coming through? Are you coming through? Because I'm hearing the footsteps, but they're still talking in the creek. And I'm like, and then they kind of just started talking, and you could hear the footprints getting more and more. And I was like, yeah, just keep coming through. Come on. Come on. You're almost through. I can hear y'all. And then they started going towards the vehicle. But the steps were still coming at me. And then a few seconds later, they started going away from their voices.
Okay. When you heard those steps coming toward you, did you hear any limb breaks or anything?
Yes.
Okay, you did.
Yes. Limb breaks, leaves crunch, all of that.
Oh,
I was hearing the actual footsteps of coming through towards me.
All right.
Yes.
So, do you think, and I'm just asking this, what you saw that made its appearance when it crossed the first time, when you said you saw it coming out of the tree line and it crossed at a diagonal, kind of away from you, so to speak, and it went into the other side of the tree line? Do you think that what was on all fours coming across from you when you were still crouched down, do you think it was the same creature or a different one?
The feeling was totally different.
Oh, okay.
Some joked and said, oh, it was Bigfoot's dog. And I'm like, okay, okay, and
well, and it's, again, there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of, again, possibilities. It could have been this, it could have been that. But when I hear something like this, my mind tries to remain, and I know this is going to sound somewhat silly in some regards since we're talking about creatures, this paranormal, but my mind is based on kind of the solidity of a physical creature that is, it is what it is. It's present. It exists.
Yes.
It's in the physical form. It's not in a mist form or anything like that. It's based just on the physicality of it being present. And you would know, wait a minute, the first creature that I saw, it was just a different feeling, a different vibe. It moved different. It looked different. It was tall. But the second one, totally different in appearance, smaller waist. You said it had more of a slick look to it.
Yeah, it had like the only way I can say, like, silky shine.
Okay.
So when the Sasquatch was walking across, if you're looking at the picture of the map, it does kind of have like an angle look to it, the field. But when you're standing in the middle of the field, it looks straight. Okay. And he didn't have a shine to him.
Oh,
he didn't have a shine.
Interesting.
And then the other thing, though, had like a shine to it. It was darker than dark and shiny. And almost like, I don't even know how to explain. How some black panthers might have a little bit of a shine to them or something.
Yeah, it's kind of a light sheen color to it, but I remember one other interview that I did. Actually, it was with that same couple that I was talking about. She saw two go across, and she said, yeah, they had a bushy tail. I knew at that point in time it wasn't a calf. She had another account during the day. She was leaving the farm, taking the same road, but as she got lower and lower, where they live is higher on a hill, and it would have been about from where they had that encounter with two. It would have been about half a mile down their driveway in the bottom of the creek area. She saw something. It was just a flash, but by the time it registered, something had turned away from her and went down a hill, and that was the first thing she said. She said it was a shiny, shiny black, like an oily black.
Yes.
It was so shiny, it actually kind of stuck out to her. And she saw the tail end. She saw this tail, but she mentioned again, she says this was a big butt on it. She goes, I know it wasn't a cow, but the shininess of the hair looked like it was oily. And that was on another occasion, and that was in the summertime. And so I think that was a year before that incident with her seeing two. But
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I can recall that she said it was a shiny, almost like an oily, the hair was so oily that when the sun hit it, you could notably see it was shiny. It had a high sheen to it.
Yes.
And that's
it wasn't shaggy hair. It was slick. Slick hair.
okay.
You know how like the old greasers in the old days where they take their hair and they'd slick it back?
Yeah.
Okay, well the hair was so slick. At one point I said if it had hair, it was short or very slicked back. Because it didn't have any kind of like, like a German Shepherd tail, like you were talking about how the tail had hair hanging off of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
The whole body was slick. It didn't have like the hair sticking out anywhere.
Okay.
It was just as slick could be. And at one point I did say if it had hair, but it was blacker than black, slick and shiny.
Interesting. And no noticeable ears. You can make out the eye shadows. You can make out a muzzle, a canine muzzle.
Yes.
Its mouth wasn't open.
No teeth were shown. No sound was made.
And you were in a field that was relatively open. There was no Johnson grass in your way.
No, way I discussed it earlier with it being overgrown. This had been freshly cut before the winter came.
Okay,
or when the winter came, they went in and cut it. But normally that field had always been low. Every time we'd ever been out there, it was always low.
Okay.
Until that one time I went and it was like way up there.
So you were able to see its front legs at least, because it was coming onto you. It was coming toward you. You could see how it was placing its front
like a cat
legs. Yeah, like a cat. Yeah. It didn't look like it had fingers, digits. It was more like a paw.
It was paws.
Okay. Wow. I would say part of me wants to say a dog man-like creature, and part of me wants to say, well, was this a different type of Squatch? But because I've heard some time back that there was variances in Squatches. Some may look canine.
Really?
Yeah. There was, and this was probably about at least 7-8 years ago, in which I recall that somebody, it was on one of the podcast shows, was talking about the variances in facial features. There was one that they said that looked more canine, had a muzzle like canine, and they had ears. But again, when you're looking at such, and here's the way, again, I should say, when you're looking at a creature that's not supposed to exist, that there's some unnatural DNA, any number of physical features and appearances could be the limit. I mean, who knows? Was it a new kind of dogman creature that we've never seen before? It's possible. Could it have been a new type of or a different type of Squatch that's typically or rarely seen? Possibly. Or could it have been a new creature that very few people have ever seen that we really haven't given it a name? It's
Right.
just a different creature. Where'd it come from? Don't know. How to get
Yeah.
there? Don't know. So maybe you saw a creature that's very rarely seen, and therefore we don't really have a name for it. And I have interviewed several people that have seen such creatures. They just what they're describing as far as the physical features, how it moved, how it looked, what it did doesn't really resonate with any of the known encounters that by and large a lot of people have seen when they're out and about and have an encounter. So I wanted to do an overview of the show, kind of a summary, and just go over a couple things that I researched after I spoke to this guest. So, first of all, I'd like to say if you like the content that you see, please subscribe. It will help the channel grow. And if you can also comment something or a question, I would really appreciate that. I always try to respond back in a timely manner, but if I don't, please give me a little bit of time to do so. The first thing I'd like to say about the show is this creature, this unknown creature. We spoke a little bit longer from the show that what you saw, and there was one thing that she said that I think what was not in the show, but I found very interesting, the terminology she used. She used the term glitchy. I asked her, I said, when this creature stepped out of the woods and you turned around and you thought you were going to see the Sasquatch again, and she turned and she just squatted. And I said, why did you squat? She said, I don't know. It just kind of, I felt comfortable trying to get low to the ground because she was in the open. And I said, okay, I've done the same thing. When you're out in the woods and you're trying to listen, more attentive, and you stop, I always crouch down to get smaller so I can look around me with very little movement. And that was the same thing. It's kind of instinctive. So she crouched down, and when she crouched down, she saw this creature, this unknown creature, step out of the woods. And she said how it came out of the woods was really strange. She called it more of mechanical like, and she used the word glitchy, kind of glitchy. And to me, glitchy is like what you would see on like the old films and movie theater, if they get stuck way back in the day. I know, I'm old. Way back in the day, and they would get stuck, and then you'd have to, they would have to reposition the film in the, before the digital days. And I thought that was interesting. She used that word. It didn't appear like it was very smooth when it came out of the woods. And it was glitchy. She said almost kind of mechanical like. So I thought that was intriguing, the terminology, the verbiage she used. And then once it was following that tree line on the map that you saw, which would have been in the red, it was very smooth in how it walked. It wasn't stalking. It wasn't in a stalk crouch position, but it was just walking. But how it walked, she said it was very, very smooth like. And that's the term she used there. The other aspect of it that I thought was very strange is this slick hair, oily. She never used oily, I did, but she said real silky, shiny, oil, and I said oily. She said yes. And I said a sheen, which she didn't use. That was my term. And so she didn't note a tail, maybe because of the angle, maybe it had one, we don't know, but that it was kind of flat on the back, and she didn't notice any ears. Now, if it had ears, they may have been laid down. We don't know. It was so black, she said, in color, she couldn't distinguish any detailed features on it. But she did say it was definitely canine because it had a snout. It was long. And it didn't have its mouth open. So she definitely noted that. I thought that was very interesting. What this creature was, I've heard of many different creatures over the years, interviewing since 2017, and I've heard a lot of interesting creatures. I don't even have a name for them. So was this a dogman creature? I'm falling more in line with that, for sure. I initially kind of chuckled and snickered when she said, yeah, someone was joking with her saying, yeah, that's Bigfoot's dog, guard dog or something like that. And I kind of snickered. And I thought about it and I said, well, who am I to think, maybe it came out of the same area that the Squatch went into. It came out of. So you kind of have to think they know about each other. What is the relationship? What is their association? We don't know. So after I thought about what she said, I kind of snickered with her. But then I thought, well, who am I? We don't know this creature. How do we know what that relationship is? We don't. So I don't know what relationship they might have or association, but you kind of have to think they bumped into each other. They know about each other, especially the Squatch going in and that creature coming out just seconds after she turned around, was walking, and turned right back around and squatted down and saw it come out close to where the Sasquatch went in and left and disappeared into that tree line. So I thought that was really interesting. So I got to be careful, we all have to be careful about our biases, right? We instantly want to judge things based on what we think we know. It's more or less what we don't know. So that's why I put that in there. I said, no, I need not to judge that, because who knows what their affiliation or association is. If you notice that I didn't give her name or the location of the WMA, that was by her request. She didn't really give a lot of details about herself because I think she's in a working capacity. And it's my policy to abide by people's wishes and their anonymity. And the reason why she didn't want to give the WMA is because it's very close to where she lives. It is a very pristine WMA, and that's wildlife management area. And there's close to 80 in Oklahoma. We have about 1.6 million acres of WMAs in Oklahoma. WMA is very close to what other states called BML, or Bureau of Land Management lands, BLM lands. So they're each a little bit different, but that's a lot of lands here we have in Oklahoma. So she didn't want to give that out, so I abided by her wishes on that. And most of my guests, if there's something that they do not want out, it is my policy to respect their wishes and just be respectful of that. We do have an artist I spoke to yesterday, and she's going to be communicating with this guest that you heard. And she's going to be recreating an illustration of what this guest saw. And then we'll reveal it on a future show. Now, it would be great if this guest also, as you heard, she invited me to go to this location, and I think I will next month, February, because being the winter month, the foliage is still down, everything is in a dormancy, and especially Johnson grass. The grass she was seeing that was really tall when she went back out and couldn't really film adequately, that's Johnson grass here in Oklahoma. It gets about as big as my pen here, bigger actually, probably as big as my thumb, and it grows extremely fast. It's really tough to weed eat. I go through a lot of weed eating line to remove it here from my property. But when it gets tall, it's hard to go through it. You can't see a thing. It'll get 6 to 7 feet tall. But in the wintertime, it's dormant, and I suspect that the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife or Natural Resources have hired a farmer to go in there and use those lands, and they'll plant crops for game. And sometimes they'll allow farmers in the area to go ahead and bale up that Johnson grass, and they can use it for cattle or wild game elsewhere. So once they do that and they plow that field and everything, it's just dirt. So that's the best time. I suspect it's just dirt right now, which would be a good time to go. So if I can get over there and investigate, take some photos, and do some filming, I will reveal the artist's rendering of what this lady saw, this unknown creature, to you at the same time. So I'll try to coordinate that together for you guys. As you noted, the auburn ball she kept talking about, this orange ball or auburn ball, I put a Sasquatch's head in there because I think that's what it was. It's not out of the question that people have described just seeing the tops of Sasquatches that have more auburn or red hair. And the way she described this one, as you heard, she went on the left side of the river, this creek, and she crouched down and she can see the auburn head and this tree shaking, this shrub shaking. And so she just assumed that it was a Sasquatch sitting down for whatever reason and shaking this limb. So that's what she probably more or less thought it was another Sasquatch, but different color than the one that stepped out in front of her when she was in the field squatting. That one was black or a dark brown, she said. I did some, and the distances too, I just roughly put those in there because she said she wasn't really good about distances. So I estimated where she marked on the map that yellow X, and I got on Google and did some distance checking. So I just said about 400 feet, which is going to be about 120 to 135 yards. It comes out specifically to 133 yards, but I just give it a ballpark in there because plus or minus a few yards from where I was guessing she stood. And then the other one where she was walking back and she turned around and squatted when she saw that unknown creature was still about 400 feet or about 130 plus yards. So let's see here. Oh, I did a little bit of research on, she was saying that the size of the creature was somewhere between a Welsh pony and a Shetland pony. Bigger than a Shetland, maybe the same size, maybe a little bit smaller than a Welsh pony. And I looked online. Welsh ponies, riding ponies, are somewhere between 500 and 600 pounds. And a Shetland pony is typically around 400 to 450 pounds. I mean, so you're still talking, let's just say, between 400 and 600 pounds. That's massive. Now, you think about this. I have a dog. His name's Sam. And he's a rescue dog. He's Australian Shepherd and Rottweiler. And at its heaviest, when I was kind of overfeeding him, he probably got up to about 125 pounds, 130. Big dog. And he probably came about mid-thigh to me. He still is at my mid-thigh. I had to put him on a little bit of a diet. So he weighs about 110 now. But when you look at him, he's a big dog. Now, he's not like a Pyrenees dog, which is considerably bigger, maybe about 25 to 30 pounds bigger than my dog, especially the males. But even then, we're not talking 400 to 600 pounds. If the average female is around 5 to 5'6", average male is around 5'6" to 5'9", and you're talking a Welsh-sized pony, for a male, the head of the pony would be somewhere in here. To a female, it's going to be eye to eye, possibly, with that pony. Can you imagine something on all four legs running at you that's the same height as you? That fits very much the same size of creature that many people I've interviewed all across and outside of Tulsa and across Oklahoma and out of state have said that's had very close encounters with these creatures. So the size estimate does correlate to what she's saying to be one of these dogman creatures. Now, is it a different kind that we don't know about? That's the big question. That's the big question. We just don't know yet. So we'll know a little bit more maybe from the artist's rendering. So again, I'll be going out to the location with her probably next month. The other thing too that I told her off the camera is that anytime you have a group of people here and you separate from the group, you always want to have firearms of some degree. Now, or some means of protection. Let's just say some means of protection. Whatever that is, whatever you're comfortable with. The men and the ladies over here had them, but when she separated off, she didn't have anything. She didn't even have her phone with her, she said. So that's going to be a big problem. So if you're ever out in an area you're just not familiar with, and you think in your head we're just going to have a good time, a campfire, that may be so 99% of the time, but that 1% is where you can have some issues. And that's where I'm concerned for you guys. If you go out, always carry on your body some means of protection. And you know, something may never happen, and that's great. You don't want it to. But if you've got it, it's nice to have it. Now, whatever that means of protection she would have had, would have helped her? Could it have helped her? I don't know. I'm going to say probably not. But it does give you some level of comfort and security. I know for me it does. But, you know, the most important tool is right up here, right? And we all panic when we confront something we've never seen before. And it's easy, like I said, to be an armchair quarterback. Well, I would have done this, and why did she do that? And how come she didn't do this? And how come she didn't? You know, we could do that all day long. But the thing of it is that when it gets right down to the brass tacks, you know, it's not you that was out in the field, it was her. And she stopped panicking when she ran back and she got to the creek. She collected her thoughts and she realized, wait a minute, I don't need to cross a creek. She looked down to the side of the bank and she saw her group. She started thinking more rationally, right? But it's just one of those things that it's hard to say what you would do until you get in that situation. It really is. Let's see, what else here? I just want to end here in closing a little bit to say this, that if you yourself have had an encounter and you've been reluctant to share, I understand. I really do. My brothers and I have had encounters. I've had some close friends have encounters. And even my brother Lane, it took him, as close as we are, and we are close, it took him 2 years to tell his story to my brothers and I. 2 years. And we're thick. So I understand. And so, but sharing is good medicine. It's good for the soul. And you want to share with someone that understands these experiences, that has had their own experiences, in my opinion. So I would say this. If you would like to share, call the toll-free number that I have. It's 866-306-8085, 24/7, 365. You can call anytime. I'll be respectful of your time. I want to hear what you have to say, and we can document it just like we documented this. And if you want to keep names and locations confidential, that's my policy. I'll do that for you. So in closing here, just remember this, folks. It's always good to go as groups. Let people know where you're going. Take some form of protection. Because always remember, we're never alone when in the wilderness. Take care.